Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to the Dis Affamie History podcast, where we'll be speaking about history and as well family history and how history relates in terms of Caribbean people for the present as well as in the past, and how in the past what that does and brings forth for what we are going through at present and what we can learn from our history, from our family, and take that moving forward. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast, and if you like it, please ensure to subscribe, like, and review. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lynn, for coming on to the podcast and speaking about your essay, Honoring Caribbean Folk Culture, a Personal Reflection. And before we start, I'll have you just introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, even for reaching out to me. It's a pleasure. My name is Glenda-Rose Layne. Nasuma is my pen name, basically, and also my middle name. I am a researcher. I am a writer. I'm a performer, a performing artist. A cultural consultant, arts administrator, and basically that's where I am, with many other names to my, many other titles to my name. But I guess that will give you an idea of, who I am by stating that, a researcher, academic, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Perfect. No, thank you so much for that. And then, we'll start here as to, firstly, just your motivation for writing this article.
To write the article. Okay. Yeah. So my motivation stemmed from an appreciation for Caribbean folk culture and a desire to preserve it, a wish to educate and inspire others about its significance. Mm-hmm. And this came about based on my connection and memories, right, that I had as growing up, which were fun memories, growing up as a child, right, experiencing the Caribbean folk culture. It really influenced my perspective. If I may just delve a little deeper, I will say that the connection to it is one that have instilled pride and in me, right? Because of the uniqueness, the uniqueness of the Caribbean folk culture. And that made me want to share, because I felt that others need to understand where I was coming from as a person out there, a person respected, right? And I believe also those other persons who understand it should also help to educate others about it. So it's not just about me. So I think that even with me sharing, other people will also want to open up and also share, because I guess the Caribbean is a space that have so many stories to tell, right? I also feel a sense of responsibility to document and safeguard, right, the cultural elements for future generations. Because I recognize that it can be lost due to modernization, technological advances, cultural homogenization, right? And if we lost this, we lost our very being. Because to me, this is the Caribbean, this is us, this is the very being, our very being as Caribbean people. This is what makes us Caribbean people. So basically, that's what my motivation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Because as well, in your article, you mentioned in terms of the title, Honoring Your Caribbean Folk Culture. Would you be able to explain why you used honoring these cultures, and what does it mean to you, and how is it reflected in your personal experiences?
Okay. My use of the term honoring Caribbean folk culture in the titles speaks to the values and respect that the traditions and heritage of the Caribbean region means to me, right? Honoring these cultures means, for me, acknowledging their significance and celebrating their uniqueness. It involves showing deep respect for the customs, the stories, the music, the games, the oral traditions, which was passed down, right? And their role in our development as a people in the Caribbean, right? So I felt that that role of itself needed to be honored because that is what makes us who we are. Um, I reflect on my personal experiences and memories relating to the Caribbean folk culture, where the community, the old, the young, or should I say the elderly and the young, different ethnical groups will gather to hear stories from elders, sing folk songs, play games, share traditional food, and eat from what I like to call the communal pot, right? Of which my grandmother, who was from Kairaku, was one of those elders. Sharing these personal experiences, right? That was straight for me how these experiences left an indelible mark on the psyche of the Caribbean people. For me, I personally was both observer and participant. So I really had it nice, right? So I value the traditions and understand how they have shaped me, have shaped my community, and my community, for example, my community identity, and by extension, the Caribbean identity, right? Um, for me, I really hope that my documentation will serve as a tool to inspire others to appreciate and preserve the traditions.
Definitely. And continuing on those traditions, because
Yeah?
you do, no, I'm just saying, continuing with what you just said with those traditions, because you did write in terms of with the oral traditions and how it does
Oh,
play a
okay.
role, right, in preserving and passing down, as you indicated, for the Caribbean folk culture. What impact have they had on your understanding of these cultures?
Um, okay. So oral traditions play a significant role in preserving and passing down Caribbean folk culture by transmitting cultural knowledge, the values, the history, from one generation to next. It is the vehicle through which the social, the political, the ethical information is passed on. Whether it is through stories, proverbs, folk songs, calypsos, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a statement we always use, right? And I am speaking, I don't want to sound biased, but I
No?
am referring to this because I think it is in the context of what the oral tradition can do. We say, it is through Calypso that our history are told, right? Our history are told through Calypso. And it is real because everything that have happened in the world nationally, I mean internationally, whether it's in the regional space or in the international space, everything that have happened, calypsos have been written on it. Whether it's on the South Africa experience, whether it's on the Federation, whether it's on Bob Marley, whether it's on the Caribbean Unity, whether it's on CARICOM, whether it's on a national level where the political aspect, the social aspect, you can pull up a calypso that speak to that. So I'm just using that reference. But this statement is also true for other forms of cultural expression, even in the field of traditional and indigenous dances. They tell a story also. Now, when we say oral tradition, a lot of time we think about the vocal aspect. But for the Caribbean people, oral tradition comes with characterization. It comes with a particular situation. So dance of itself, in its way of having a language, we know dance has a language. They, when you look at the indigenous and the traditional dances, the folk dance of the Caribbean, what you find is that when you look at it, I'm talking now not about the modernization of it. I'm speaking about in its authentic frame. When you see the elders dance these dances, you see character, you understand what they are trying to say. So they are speaking to you, they're speaking a language. So for me, oral traditions serve as a living archive, right, of Caribbean folk culture, helping to ensure its continuity and relevance in even in this contemporary times, right? The oral tradition, if I may continue, they embody the spirit, right, of the Caribbean people, their struggle, their triumph. It has been keeping alive the collective memory of the Caribbean people, of the community in which you live, right? Now, from very early on, I recognize the bond, for example, that the communal gatherings and the communal pot encouraged, right? So, and this came because of the oral tradition, because something was happening, and um, given that people came, people spoke. So, oral tradition often bring the community together, whether through storytelling, gatherings of for communal singing or folk songs. Um, they foster a sense of togetherness and unity within the community. They create opportunities also for shared experiences and socialization, because there is where people will tell you things that are happening in their life. People giving advice. It was the school without walls. It is here where, and it was the place, it was the I will say it also dealt with the psychological fabric of the society. In that people had an opportunity to relieve instead of keeping in things that were really bothering them. And the elders will give advice in their own way. They didn't want to study psychology, but they went to the School of Knocks, the
Yeah,
School of
that's
Hard
true.
Knocks. They went there, and based on that experience, they will give advice. And I have seen, where, for example, like with my grandmother, I remember people in the community having probably problem with their husbands or their wives. And they will come and speak to her, and she will, sometimes the husband will come, so and so, because they felt that they could speak to her, and whatever advice she will give will help in bettering the situation, right? Um, so the oral tradition really is rooted in historical experiences, memories, and experiences, in the sense, besides the historical social experiences, because the way advice was based on knowledge, on things that might have happened in their own life, right? So yes, it provides a window into the past, but it offer also insights into how Caribbean people view themselves and view others, right? So my personal experiences listening to stories, listening to calypso, folk song, listening to reggae music, listening to all sort of genre work from all over the place, right? In throughout the Caribbean, and being schooled by proverbs from elders and participating in communal gatherings have allowed me personally to appreciate the richness and the significance of these traditions.
Definitely, and it's very much so to the community aspect of it.
What? Excuse me?
I'm just saying, just for the community aspect of it, that it really reflects that in terms of the fact that you can lean on somebody. It's not that it's very individualistic like it is here in North America. I'm just saying that, right? I'm just saying that what you've mentioned, what you just said, is that it's very community wise. It's not individualistic. That's the type of the history.
Yes.
Right.
And even more so, even that whole concept, every time I think And every time, and it's something I always, I mean, probably I have not heard people men talking about that, but it's something that resonates with me. And the other day I say, you know what, look up this and see if it really has this phrase exists. And that is the phrasing that I always use of the communal pot, right? So I always used to be talking about the communal pot, right? And I say, but why nobody else ever does mention this communal pot thing? And I recognize, yes, when I looked up the phrase that the explanation for it was exactly what I was talking about. That whole, where the whole community come together. And I mean, and they eat from the same part. So that, right? When you see people doing that, they are saying we are all one, we are all one family, we all belong to each other, you know. Yeah. So
That's great. And then of course, with these Caribbean folk cultures, you're looking at the blend of African, European, indigenous, Asian influences. Would you be able to elaborate on how these cultural fusions reflected in your personal experiences in this particular essay?
okay. Um, Subtly in the article, you will it is there.
Yeah.
And experiential wise, I can tell you about me.
Mm-hmm.
So having grown up in South Trinidad, right, I had the privilege of living in a community with many ethnic groups. So when I speak about the community and the communal part, I am speaking about the community with all these different ethnic groups. In addition to that, my mother, for example, on her maternal side, came from a background deeply rooted in the Hindu traditions, right? Um, there was a great mix of, apart from that, in fact, my father, in fact, I should say, mention this too. My father, his father, which is my grandfather, right? He was of Scottish descent. His mother, right? She was a Maroon, right?
Wow.
Right, from Carriacou, right? She was, her family is one of those that, went over, went into Carriacou and runaway slave that went into Carriacou. So she was, right, so a Maroon, right? And she always boasts about their Zulu ancestry and that kind of stuff, right? But then again, on my mother's side again, her father came from Barbados, right? And of course, he again had a whole European mix with him. He came as an overseer. So even from speaking about my experience, my Caribbean self does not speak to African, Indian, Chinese, but my Caribbean self is one that speaks to my experiences, right? Because so many different contributing factors that make me Caribbean. And it took me a while for me to really come understand that, because there was a time that I used to lean on one side only and denounce the other aspect of me, right? And then I realized, when I started recognizing and acknowledging that my Caribbean being is more than what I was seeing of myself, a sense of freedom came over me, right? And that sense of freedom gave me a greater opportunity to express myself and accept and acknowledge the Caribbean people as a unique people, right? So people a lot of time they will be like, oh, but how, Glenda, how, they see you and they think that, okay, and then I will say, no, 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 no. I do this, I do that, I do that, because I acknowledge my Caribbean being, right? Um, I have my mother, and I wrote a paper on that actually early on this year, where I spoke about my background and about my Caribbean self. And one of the things, like with my mother, and I mean this might be shocking to a lot of people, when you see her, you see a brown skinned African woman, nappy hair, right? Coca-Cola shape, as my father used to say. And you know why he will say that? Because that is what, he was very skinny and she had size, but she had a really beautiful shape. And, but she spoke fluent Hindi. She never drank alcohol. She never ate meat. She followed full Hindu traditions. So you understand what I'm saying? So
yeah.
even though, because of her mixed heritage, but she leaned towards that. She never ate meat, never eat meat, never eat egg, nothing like that. Never a touch of alcohol never went on her lips. She was the first African woman that I knew, and her sisters and they, that had tattoo on their skin. The marking. And it was Indian seals that she had on her skin. So I am saying this I also had an uncle on my father's side now. He spoke many languages, right? He spoke many languages, a lot of different languages, but he was fluent in Hindi and Arabic, right? So he will sit down with any pundit and he knew how to keep a press, a Hindu press. So I am saying this for you to understand where I'm coming from and why when I write, even though I might not say Indian or I might speak more to certain African traditions, based on where I am coming from when I speak Caribbean, I am speaking about country of people who have a very dynamic spectrum as it comes to the ethnical groups that contributed to the space. Yeah.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, that's the majority of the people, whether they know it or not, in terms of the whole dynamic of what their background is. Um, and then the other thing is, I guess this speaks to, I guess, the rich history of dance, music, and art. And then, of course, your exposure or participation in this cultural expression influenced your connection further to the Caribbean folklore culture. And how do you believe these forms of expression contribute to the preservation of the tradition?
Well, okay, so maybe first, based on what I mentioned previously, you will understand that I am a living exhibit of the influences, right? I have been a participant, I have been an observer, as I said, and what it has done, what it has done is that it made me, I become the vehicle of preservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to use me. I become a vehicle of preservation. So how these forms that was handed down when my grandmother when she died, I was 10 years old, and most of the elders in the community, they were already in their 70s and so on. And what they were depositing to us as young people, a lot of us who grew up in that community, even though we move out, we embodied that preservation in that remained with us, right? The difference, however, was that at that time we weren't living in a technological advanced world as we are now. So that we carrying that light, that flambeau, forward was much easier because we were the transition children where from this form, the communal yard, the communal pot, onto stages, carrying it onto stage for performance purposes with lights and whatever, and sound system and so on. Then carrying them into competitions. And then the day it came and we started to commercialize it. But what we did, we were able to share it, right? So at the end of the day, the preservation that happened was within us, It molded us, and what it molded us and what it was embedded in us is what we have. That vehicle that we became the vehicle of preservation. This is where the depository was and continue to be for those of us who are still here and still willing to accept it there. Yeah?
Yes, definitely. You're the driving force to be able to continue with this, as well as, words matter. And how has words through song and storytelling impacted your opinion to the development of an individual and the greater society?
Well, this one is one that I will want to make a few points on because you asked a major question. So first, let us talk about the emotional resonance, right? Songs and stories, there's still powerful emotions in us, right? Whether good, whether bad, and this is the reason why I remember long ago there were certain songs that you couldn't, the older people they wanted to listen at all because because they understood the power of the words and what it can do, and songs and music and what it can do to you. Because actually they can invoke feelings of joy, sorrow, empathy. They can inspire you, so through this emotional connection, individual learn how to understand, process, and also to process and express their emotions, right? So therefore, we're talking fostering emotional intelligence and well-being. Then we have what we'll call words again and cultural transmission, right? Stories and songs, they carry the cultural heritage, they convey a society belief, the values, the traditions. And this actually transmission helps individuals to connect with their roots, understand their identity, and maintain a sense of belonging. The other one that I would like to speak about is education and moral development. So many stories and songs contain moral lessons and ethical principles. They are practical tools for imparting values, teaching right from wrong, and encouraging ethical behavior. If we want to talk about things like proverbs and how proverbs, they guided us and taught us things through proverbs, right? So actually they contribute to an individual moral and ethical development. Language and communication. That's why I tell you this one might be a big one in India.
That's okay.
Language and communication skills, right? So exposure to various words, expression, narratives that is found in sounds, right? That are found in sounds and stories. I remember some years ago, I decided to host a calypso writing workshop, and I had a lot of persons, people like Dr. Liverpool and so on, come. They were the ones facilitating for me. And the persons and they who were the participants who were there. First day Dr. Liverpool came in, he came in with a very big binder. And then he had me copy for everybody. So everybody had it. So it was like they're going, so they was like, wait, so it's cool. It's kind of like we're going to school because it was this big, I still have a copy of it. And he said, he said, what people don't understand, what we take, for granted as a Calypsonian goes beyond that. As a Calypsonian, you have to have understanding of social context, political context. You have to have emotional context. You have to be able to understand about how things taste without even tasting it, how it smells without even smelling it. Because your words have to be able to play on people's emotion, right? And what you are talking there is creative writing. What you are talking there is using words and expression and narratives to really cause people to emote. So the language skills, right? the words, it really helps in the enhancement of language skills, vocabulary, communication abilities, right? So in essence, they promote linguistic creativity and mastery, right? Words and stories, they do that. Then we have critical thinking and imagination, right? But Marley just did not just decide to write a song and just was a philosopher. The words and songs that's philosophy. They didn't go nowhere to study philosophy, but they are philosophers, right? So these forms of expression often challenge the audience to think critically and imaginatively. Because when you hear, you actually, what make us wave and jump and wave and do all kind of craziness at Carnival is the words, right? It happens to be the words, right? So they encourage individuals to question, to analyze and interpret the content, fostering intellectual growth, creative thinking, social awareness, and empathy. Many songs and stories addresses societal issues such as inequality, injustice, and social struggles, right? There is awareness and promote empathy by enabling, individuals to see the world in a different place, see it in a different way, see it as other people might see it, have different viewpoints. So that social consciousness, it encourages that and the compassionate behavior towards society. The empowerment and inspiration, inspiring stories of individuals overcoming challenges and empowering lyrics in songs can also motivate individuals to confront their obstacles with determination and, of course, with resilience, right? So, another thing, a lot of the words that you hear and other stories and songs and so on, you hear in the Caribbean space, they offer hope, right? Right? They offer hope and they believe that individuals can make a difference, right? They tell you story. Sometimes when you hear, and I probably should mention like someone like a Black Stallion song. When you listen to it, some of his words, some of his songs. In fact, all of his songs are great, but when you listen to some of it, really gives you hope, right? It's like telling you, listen, don't worry, things are gonna be better. This is going to happen. So they do that. They give us hope. Unity and connection, of course. When you're here, we always come together. People who don't even speak when they like the same song, right? And then again, we have shared experience because of that. So it brings us together because we go to concerts, we have shows, we have events, we have storytelling events. So people come together. People who normally they don't see each other for how long, but might just how long I see you, but I know you'll come out tonight. You understand? That is much time people say, Glenda, long ago, I know tonight you was letting this one. So that connection, it helps to strengthen social bonds and encourage sense of togetherness. Again, that came from because of the fact how the words, how the stories, how the songs motivate us to come on to connect to other people. And preservation, of course, we spoke about that, the preservation of history. Every folk song, every calypso, every song that was written have a story behind it. Came from a place that there is a story. I don't know if I should, but in fact, I will continue. I want to give an example because I think we are speaking to contemporary audiences too. Mm-hmm. I want to give an example. I'm sure you know that everybody is on the Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is the biggest thing now, right? And even though Taylor Swift might not be a Caribbean person, what is unique and what makes everybody old and young following Taylor Swift? It has nothing to do because she's speaking out for women. Not only that, but there's something more. And that is she's speaking to us. As I was telling someone the other day, I said Taylor Swift have written about tabanca. I don't know if you know what tabanca is. Tabanca is a term, it's a slang we use in Trinidad and Tobago when you have, let us say, love issues. boyfriend leave you and you're going through. So it have different forms of tabanka, taranji, all kind of things you call it, different things. But tabanka is the milder case where you're home, you're crying, you all kind of thing. But she written about tabanka. She have written about post tabanka. She have written about tabanka while she having tabanka. She have written about being in a relationship, now leave the relationship, having the tabanka and going into our next relationship and wondering if she should go back into the tabanka. So I'm just using those terms. She has written about everything that a person could experience. And I'm just using that aspect of love for example. So that she resonates not only with people her age, exactly, but older persons. Yes. So I have friends who tell me, after I went to Taylor Swift concert with my children and my two daughters, I become a Swiftie. I all of a sudden singing all the one, and it's because of that, right? And in talking that, we said preservation of history, as I said. So in saying that, what I am saying, the history Taylor Swift wrote from a place of how she felt, what she experienced. That was history, her personal history. And each of these writers or the words that are used in text and so on in the Caribbean, it's coming from a place. And most of the time, it's a place, it's always an emotional place, but most of the time, it's a place of grassroots. Whether or not you are whoever, it will come from a grassroots experience. You see, a lot of time we tend to feel that because a person is probably at a different level on the spectrum or they see themselves there, that they don't have grassroots experiences. Mm-hmm. Grassroots experiences happens to just about everyone. Grassroots experiences come with things like death, mm-hmm, with baby being born, right? No matter how rich you are, right? Death affects you the same way. That is what makes that the brotherhood of man. That we go through the same feeling and experiences based on events, right? So, and as I say, injustice anywhere in the world is injustice. It doesn't matter where, and so that those words help in preserving history. And as I keep saying, your story, my story, is his story. That is where history comes from, right? All of us have a story to tell, right? So for me, this is where I see, how I see it, how it has, how it develop us, help to develop us, how it affect us. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
I know it was a whole lot, but I hope
that's fun. That was great because that just shows how we are connected as well by these words, by all these different experiences, mm-hmm, as well, right? So, going to that concept of identity is definitely another significance, which I think you just touched upon as well. How does your own, again, personal reflection address the complexities of Caribbean identity and its link to folk cultures?
So the complexities of Caribbean identity are reflected in the diverse cultural influences, right? Mentioned. Yeah. As we mentioned before, African, European, the indigenous, the Asian, and the fusion of these cultural elements, right, creates a rich and multifaceted identity for us. So that when we speak about storytelling is not unique to us, to say to African people only. They are storytelling. All the different races, they happens to have storytelling. In the Caribbean folk culture, even though people might tend to think, oh, this is just our African tradition, because we are our spectrum, the spectrum of the Caribbean people, the Caribbean being is so dynamic. Every race, everybody that we came into contact with helped to contribute, right, to that folk culture. Everybody that we came in contact with, one way or the other, helped to contribute to that, to the folk culture that is the Caribbean folk culture. Whether you want to believe it, whether you want to denounce it, the facts, that's the fact. Because we all live together in the one space for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years we live here. All of our experiences help to influence each other. It wasn't like the African people living by themselves in an island and never coming into contact with the Indian people. No. So, hence the reason why when you look at cooking, foods that we cook, it's always, yes, a lot. We have a lot of African traditions, yes, in the food, but it is influenced also by the other cultures. So food again is one way to see how that identity, that Caribbean identity, complexity of the identity. Food, the dances, yes, we have African dances as much as we do have the authentic African, well, what we call authentic African dances. You will find aspects of our dances that really have other influences in it. And we do in our folk, we do practice other folk dances that we inherited. So that's why I tend to use the word sometime. I say indigenous and traditional, right? Because some of it came and got mixed up here and there, and then some of it is traditional. And those dances that are indigenous to the Caribbean, you will find that they are a mix here. Because they are dances that came from here, right here. We created it. We put our own thing to it and call it what we want to call it. You understand? So that you're seeing the link. That is where you see it. Even in the calypsos, for example, I will use calypso again. Well, in fact, instead of using even calypso, I would rather to use soca. Soca is a really, really a great example of that fusion and that link to the folk culture because it is calypso, but it has so many other. It has European influence. It have just about everything. It's a callaloo the same way. So you get that Latin influence in it. So that Caribbean identity and its linked to the folk culture. That is where it comes from, where our dynamic spectrum is what contributes to develop what we will call the Caribbean folk culture. It is not really one or the other. It's not like, okay, my one is better than yours. It is not that. Right? So, and in storytelling and oral tradition, for sure, you find it there. In our medicine, you find it here. A lot of our herbs that we have, you know that there are a lot. Our herbs speak to a lot about the influence also of the first people. I guess you are aware of that. Some of the things that we use in food, also that actually came from them. We learned that from them. Some of the things that we practice, right, came from them. When you look at our love for things like cassava, for example, right? That is very much the Amerindian, the first people, and that's where we get that from, the cassava, So, yeah. So that is where I will see the link to the folk culture.
Perfect. And then what have you seen as the challenges and opportunities that you've encountered or observed?
What are the challenge? What are some of the challenges? That's what you're asking. Yeah. Okay. There's a word that I think that is overused, That I don't, every time I use it, I feel like it is such a cheap word to use now because everybody is using it. So maybe, although it means the same thing, maybe I will put it in a phrase. So instead of saying globalization, the word is globalization. Everybody is on globalization. I will say, which is the same, the influence of global culture.
Yes.
Right? That is one. That is one of the challenges, primarily through mass media, the internet, right? The younger generation is more exposed to the international popular culture, as we know, right? So that is a challenge. Language shift. This one for me, it's one that really um I don't know how we can reach the people to let them know this is so important. Now, the Caribbean people, part of what we did is develop language patterns, right? Given based on our various influences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have our patois, right? What we call our patois. And somewhere along the line, we tend to think, and even the older people, oh, they're not speaking proper English. Hey, no, we're not speaking standard English. We are speaking language that we develop as a people. We are speaking a language. Just as how English language was developed, it's the same way these patois throughout the Caribbean, they were developed the same way. Get that click? For me, that is why I'm saying, hey, hello. Right?
Yeah.
And that language, unless we start to acknowledge that the way we speak as a grassroots people is a language unto itself, and we respect that language and understand that standard English is another language. So by nature, we are talking that we are multilingual. Unless we can accept ourselves as that. Because I will tell you why it is important and why I have it as a challenge. If I tell you a proverb in standard English, it does in no way it will resonate as if I tell you it in the patois where it comes from. So an example, a guy was relating to me a story about an incident that happened in an event that I was supposed to go to and I did not go. But thank God I did not go because they had, some shooting, whatever, in the incident. And he was explaining to me. And then he went down and he said, he said, girl, well, when I see how what going on here, I just say to myself, foot, I ever eat and I give you? I ever nyam and I give you? And he said, and that was it for me. So I was like, what? I said, foot, I ever nyam and I give you? And he said, so I did not understand because it was the first time I was hearing this phrase. And then he said, girl, I said, what that mean? He said, listen. He said, it's an old saying. He said, it means to say, when you get scared, your foot does get frightened, your foot will get weak. He says, so it's like a phrasing that you say, every time I eat, you get in food too, so you're supposed to have strength to run, right? He says, so in essence, that is, so I'm just, though, if I try to explain that differently, it just will not sound the same. And as a people, we are natural storytellers. When we relate a story for you, it is different if a person come and relate that story in standard English. The Caribbean is the only place where old talk is a big thing, right? Pekong is a big thing, right? And it's an everyday thing for us, whether you're Indian or African, that is a big thing. So that language shift, for me, that is a challenge. Migration is another challenge, right? And a major challenge because, like with me and some others like myself who grew up in a particular society, we left and really now because we leave because of different reasons, and persons who are there now and they are not so motivated then to do the work that was handed down, mean that actually the the community lose a certain thread in the fabric of the community was interfered with. So migration is a major problem. And then we have what we call cultural appropriation, right? That is a main thing, as you know, Caribbean culture, including music, everything, where a lot of people come in and a lot of us also go out, change up what was studied and the authenticity gone, right? Commercialization has done that, and it dilutes what really is the Caribbean culture. So that is another cultural appropriation for sure. And of course, the main culprit, lack of documentation, right? No longer we are living in this society where we could say we could have the Caribbean, we'll hand it down that way. So it is important now that apart from everything else, we document things, right? And I'm realizing a lot of everybody want to be a performer. Everybody want to be a dancer, a singer. Everybody want to be on the stage. And fine, I love being on the stage also. I do that. I'm fortunate enough to do both. But some of the persons who are getting on stage and want to dance, and everybody want to dance and so on, everybody want to sing, everybody want to, they also need to understand that they need to document. But nobody is interested in researching. Nobody is interested in that. When I say nobody, I mean very few. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the few, it is like nobody. I am a part probably of the nobody. You understand? So lack of documentation, very important. I mean, that's a challenge also. So opportunities now. What opportunities exist? So one, I am seeing where schools and community organizations can play a vital role in preserving, right, by incorporating cultural education into the curriculum, organizing workshops and events. Media and technology, while globalization presents challenges, it also offers opportunities. The internet can, and it has been, during COVID, we saw that, right? A powerful tool for sharing and promoting the culture. Social media and video sharing platforms can showcase traditional music, dance, storytelling. So we saw it during COVID. I was a part of that. And I know that it can work. Even workshops were conducted on, yeah. So I had like, it was 5 people kind of assemble. We had the 5-person help, had 2 drummers, 3 dancers, and we showed step by step and did a lot of instructional videos and that kind of stuff. Cultural festivals. That's an opportunity. We love to host events in the Caribbean. We always like to line, right? These events, of course, well, it's already doing that, and we can do more to serve as platforms for showcasing and, of course, and passing on the culture, intergenerational transmission and learning, and I will say peering, encouraging dialogue between generations, having, having mentors and, mentoring with the masters and that kind of thing, whereby young people, they have to choose somebody in the community probably and spend, whether it's one day, or I mean, one evening per week or one day per month or however. That is another opportunity. And they have to document, and that could be a school project, right? Where, so that is a way. Collaboration between government, NGOs, artists, local communities, um, initiatives to preserve. You could create initiatives through that to preserve and promote the Caribbean culture. Documentaries, right? That's, even like what you are doing here, right? Recording, documenting oral traditions, stories and songs, things like that. What you are doing here is one of the ways, having podcasts and so on. Those are ways that we can create archives and digital libraries and that kind of thing. And that will help. That's an opportunity. Then we have tourism. While it is a challenge, it also presents an opportunity also to do, things like heritage tourism and cultural and heritage tourism and so on. But, which, of course, will provide economic incentives. Now, one of the things that I want to mention here, in fact, I think I will hold that until probably later on.
Okay.
Right? But yeah, so basically those are some of the opportunities. I think I will hold that thought for a while.
Perfect. Okay, no worries. So, because now I just wanted to ask in terms of how has the process of writing this essay or article, impacted your personal reflection on the Caribbean folk cultures, and how has it influenced how you engage with these cultures in your everyday life?
Um, Personally, I think because of the way I grew up, writing the article of itself was, let us put, a fruit of what was already embedded in me, right? So that what the impact that it have on me presently is that I need to write more. I need to do more things. There's so much to be done. So that is really, if you have, that is, I think that is where I realize, hey, you need to do much more. You need to do much more, right? And because for me, it wasn't just about it wasn't about a research. It was about it was about personal experience that I felt I had to share. And it was just about one more stepping stone into what needs to be done, because now more than ever I'm realizing, hey, you need to do more, you need to write, you need to, So I think that I hope that answer your question, because
Yes.
the only way I can put it across.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's perfect. And as we come to a close now, what message or call to action would you want people, our audience right now, to take away from your reflection?
Okay. Well, one, of course, I emphasize that in the article, the importance of preserving, right? Because we have a rich repository and historical, cultural, and ethical knowledge that exists out there. So therefore, the call for individuals and communities to actively maintain the number one, the intangible cultural assets, and also to find a way to preserve it in their own way. To understand and respect the traditions, because they are not just tales of the past, but valuable tools for teaching future generations values, the morals, the life lessons. Diversity and unity. The whole thing about we know what it is. Let us acknowledge each other. Let us understand that it's the Caribbean space is a space that really is a rich spectrum of different ethnical groups, and that we must acknowledge and respect each other and understand the contribution that each other play, all right, into making this space what it is, whether good or bad, right? Mm-hmm. So that unity and shared value system, with culture, which again leads to cultural fusion, the appreciation for adaptability and resilience, right? Of what, how all these different things were able to survive and fuse into something that is, into a melting pot that became something that is so great that people talk about it. Also, let us use technology in a way that can really help us explore ways in how to use the technology to safeguard the traditions for future generations. Let us continue. Let us not get on behave like technology is not for us, right? Respect for elders, very important, right? they are encouraged to respect the elders and actively seek opportunities to learn from them. And this is the point that I think that I want to make here. There is a situation where a lot of people, and I don't like it at all. But a lot of people, whether it's students or who, go to do research, go to the elderly, and they write, and then they leave, and they don't, number one, they don't really acknowledge them. They do not give any form of contribution to them. And that is not acceptable, right? That is not acceptable. You are studying, whether you're doing your PhD, you're doing your master's, or you just want to use it for whatever purpose. It doesn't matter for me, right? My thing is contribute, show appreciation. Show appreciation. In one way or the other, give a token of appreciation, plus make sure and mention where you got your information from. Acknowledge it. And if it's a book, send a copy to them. Right? You know, they might be able to read it, but the whole idea that they have it, when somebody else passed by, I have seen that happen with me. Oh, you know, in fact, I did help somebody, you know, and you know, they write when they mention me in the book, and they will call somebody, bring the book and show me. So they feel, let them feel, let them understand that what you all are doing is so important, right? Do not use our elders. Respect them, acknowledge them, right? Because they are the ones that have the knowledge. No book can teach you when you get it firsthand from them. Community engagement, right? So the readers are encouraged to engage with communities and participate in cultural events and gatherings and so on. It does, for me, I just said, I don't care if you like the person, you don't like the person, who doing it, or that is not that is not important in my book. My book, there is a difference between being there, experiencing it. There is, because you feel it come like ethnographic research without officially saying I'm an ethnographic researcher. It's because I was there and experienced it that I can speak from where I'm speaking now, coming from the space that I'm coming from. Education and awareness, right? Educate yourself about, not only about from the location that you come from, because I have been in spaces, I mean, I can speak to that. I wouldn't go, you know, but I have been in spaces where people believe that where they live in the Caribbean, the culture that there is the best. And fine, right? That's okay to feel that way. But learn to educate yourself about what other things, what is happening in the other part of the Caribbean, what is the folk culture that exists there, and how do we connect as a people, right? Because the Caribbean space is a space that is one, you know, Black Stalin said it in the right way, right? The Caribbean man, one race coming from the same place, that take the same trip on the same ship. And that is why we said we need to push one common intention for a better life in the region. That should be the goal of the Caribbean man. So for me, that is the goal of the Caribbean man, and we need to understand that.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Layne, for coming on and speaking to all of this very passionately. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Hoped you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and write a review for the episode wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you.